Earlier, we recognized that nouns and adjectives must agree with each other in order to show that they belong translated together. To agree, they must have the same gender, number, and case. And to review, gender will be masculine, feminine, neuter, number is our singular and plural, and case could be anything such as nominative, accusative, etc. So if we take a noun like will aurum, we can tell based upon the ending the gender, number, and case of that noun. The A in aurum indicates to me that it belongs to the first declension. Now from there, we can base the aurum ending on our chart to show that it's feminine, plural, and genitive. Now if we wanted to agree with an adjective, we're going to have to take a look at the nature of adjectives first. Most adjectives that we've encountered so far have been what we call 2-1-2 adjectives. So that means that they can decline like the second, the first, or the second declension, where the us is reserved for masculine nouns, the a is reserved for agreeing with feminine nouns, and the is reserved for agreeing with neuter nouns. So if the noun is masculine, we take the adjective ending from the second declension. If the noun is feminine, we take the adjective ending from the first declension. And if the noun is neuter, we take the adjective ending from the second declension, neuter. So let's use this now to make will aurum agree with an adjective. We know will aurum is feminine, plural, and genitive. So let's make it agree with magnus, which means great. Because I already know that my noun is feminine, I'm going to use the a endings to represent the agreement between noun and adjective. So let's bring up the first declension again. And as we do that, let's first get the stem, which is mag. And then I can add my ending. So I'm going to match it up, feminine, which is why I'm using the first declension, plural, and then I go to genitive. So they have similar endings, magnarum, will aurum. However, be careful. A noun and adjective will not always have the same endings like we saw in the last slide. For example, let's look at agricola. Agricola is a strange noun because even though it has an A at the end of it and it looks feminine, it's actually masculine, it's singular, and it's nominative. So, because my noun is masculine, I'm going to use the us endings. So the second declension will be used to describe my noun. So I brought up the second declension, and let's match it up. Let's use mal as the stem for bad, and now we need an ending to put on it. So I've got second declension up for masculine, singular means I'll look in this column, and nominative means I'll have to look right up here. So I will use us. So if I wanted to describe a bad farmer, I would say agricola malus. Now, us, adjectives are what we call 2-1-2 adjectives because they use the first and second declensions to represent the agreement with the nouns. We also have a type of adjective called the third declension adjectives, and these decline like the third declension. There's also a form for masculine, feminine, and neuter. However, let's take a look. Omnis, is, e. If you notice, these are extremely different than what we've seen over here. But again, the is masculine, is feminine, e neuter. The same rules will apply for gender, number, case agreement as we saw with 2-1-2 adjectives. However, these are now the endings that will be used. If you notice, masculine and feminine use the same set of endings. Neuter is the one that's different. With the masculine and feminine, the only thing that's different from the third declension that we know already is the ablative singular. In neuter, we still have the concept of nominative applying, where we use the letter E and we use I and A for the plurals. This is what the adjective omnis would look like when it's declined. So if you want to take a second to jot these down, it'll be a great idea to have these in your notebook. If you notice, we're still paying attention with the same ending, blank, is, em, now with an E. And then the s, ibus, s, ibus. So now let's actually apply this to a noun-adjective agreement. Let's use the noun hortum, which we know means garden. And I want it to say each garden. So I've got my stem omn. So that means I'm going to look at the third declension because omn I know belongs to a third declension adjective. So now let's find our gender number case. I know hortum is masculine because it's hortus in the nominative. If I look at that, then I can immediately recognize that my ending will have to come from over here, not here, because these represent masculine and feminine agreement. This represents neuter. So let's get rid of the neuter and focus on this section. Now let's figure out the number, whether it's singular or plural. The ending, if I go through my second declension, I find out is singular. So let's focus in this column. Next, I need to figure out the case. And hortum, that ending, is accusative, so I can limit it now to nem. And I'll put my ending on, and now I have agreement for each garden. Let's review how to do this, though, using a 2-1-2 adjective. Magn, which means great, as we saw before. Now, I can recognize this, though, as a 2-1-2 adjective, because that's how we learned it. Because I'm describing something masculine, I'm going to stick with the second declension endings to describe it. So I brought my second declension up. Now let's match it up in gender number case. Gender is already represented by the second declension. Number, singular, so I look at this column, and then I'll move down to accusative, which means if I want to describe the great garden, I would use If this were in a sentence, I could recognize that they all agree with each other and they're all supposed to be translated together because they all have the same gender, number, and case, even though this is from a different declension. So in a sentence, this would read, each great garden. So let's try some, see how you feel about this. My suggestion would be to pause the video after I give you the noun and the adjective. Then I'll go through an explanation as to how I chose that. Let's start with feminas, and let's describe it as being good women. So let's see how you went about doing this. The first thing that you should have recognized was that bone comes from a 2-1-2 adjective, bonus So that means we're going to focus our attention down here. Next, you should recognize the gender number case of feminas. So the first thing we see is that it's feminine because of that A. So we're going to isolate the number, which is plural, and then we're going to do the case, which is accusative. So that means we'll look here in the feminine adjective endings. We'll go to the plural column, which is the second one, move down to the accusative, and we have as as our ending. So the good women, feminas bonas. Let's get rid of this, and let's try it now with omn. This is a third declension adjective, so pause it and try it on your own. Okay, let's see what you got. We're going to keep the same gender number case of feminas. And because this is a third declension adjective, we're going to focus our attention over here instead of down here. And it's also important to note, guys, that an adjective can only belong to either the third declension or 2-1-2. Okay, so now we have the division over here. Feminine means I'm going to look at this box up here because these represent masculine and feminine. Then I'm going to go to the plural column, which is right there, and match it up to the accusative. So that means if I want to describe all of the women, they will be feminas omnes. Good. All right, let's try another. Let's do militis Pause it, try it. All right, let's go over this. Militis. I know is a third declension adjective because it's the only one we've been using so far. Militis. If I break the gender number case down of this word, I figure out that militis is masculine because after all it means soldier, and back in antiquity they could only be male for the Romans. Singular because of the is. This belongs to the third declension also. So that is here is then representing the genitive. So my gender number case represents masculine singular genitive. So let's go to the third declension endings. I go to the masculine feminine section. I go to the singular. I go to the genitive. So this combination would say of each soldier. Now let's try a different adjective. Bone. Let's say of the good soldier. Keeping the same gender number case, I now represent that bone is from a 2-1-2 adjective, so I'll focus my attention down here. Because it's masculine, I'm going to focus my attention on the second declension endings. It's singular, so I'll look in this column. Moving down to genitive, there we go, I. So if I were to describe this noun and adjective pair, militis boni, of the good soldier. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that's our introduction to third declension adjectives. We will be working with them a lot more in class, so hopefully you took very good notes on what you saw here so that we're able to make sure we can understand this completely by the time we leave class tomorrow.